Street photography, man. It's like the kale of the photographic world. It's either a hipster's wet dream or a pretentious hustle disguised as avant-garde. You ever wonder if it's a legitimate art form, a sketchy voyeuristic pursuit, or just the latest reason people give for loitering around with cameras waiting for life to hand them an unexpected Kodak moment? Well, me too. Sometimes in the midst of all the existential confusion, street photography does deliver that intangible essence of life that makes you reconsider your so-so existence. It's rare, but it happens. Much like when you stumble upon an obscure indie band and they end up becoming one of your all-time favorites. Visionaries like Bruce Gilden, Gary Winogrand, Van Ho, Saul Leiter, and William Eggleston occasionally nail it, capturing life's unscripted symphony with finesse. But here's where it gets weird. My skepticism starts surfacing when we talk about the other 99% of street photography. It's like a massive real-time experiment in chaotic composition, conducted by folks who think that spontaneity and instant coffee are the same thing. This rabbit hole takes us into the realm of ethics, personal boundaries, and a potentially creepy inclination to document unsuspecting strangers. It's as if you're suddenly trapped in a never-ending debate about whether it's cool to eavesdrop on someone's conversation at a coffee shop. But street photography at its core might just be one of the purest forms of art that we've got. Now, I'm not saying it's without its quirks, but there's something unadulterated about capturing life on the fly, a purity that's both liberating and challenging. In this digital age of perfectly curated Instagram grids and retouched selfies, street photography gives you a raw, unfiltered dose of reality. It's art in its most spontaneous and genuine form. There's no script, no fancy setups, no second takes. It's the real world unfolding, uncensored. In a world of Photoshop and filters, street photography is like the last rebellious teenager unwilling to conform. It's art that doesn't need a studio. The street itself is its canvas. Of course, that is what one might say if they were trying to sell you street photography. But the notion that street photography is pure art stems from its supposed spontaneity and authenticity. But here's the thing. Authenticity doesn't always equate to quality art. Just because something is candid doesn't mean it's worth a gallery exhibit. We live in an era where everyone is a photographer thanks to a smartphone in their pocket. So taking random shots of strangers on the street and calling it art feels more like an attempt to legitimize an obsession rather than a genuine artistic endeavor. Street photography's cult following insists it's the antidote to the overly curated world of social media, but it often appears like an excuse for amateur photographers to avoid putting in the real work. Okay, that's a little harsh, but we're gonna run with it. It kind of feels like the lazy man's art, an embrace of chaos and disarray hiding behind the facade of authenticity. In reality, the chaotic nature of street photography often results in images that look like a haphazard visual cacophony. So let's be honest, street photography is not this unparalleled, unadulterated art form. It feels more like the easy way out, a refuge for those who can't be bothered with planning or premeditation. It's like this mishmash of visuals that don't necessarily make you see the world differently, they just make you question why you're looking at them in the first place. While it may offer a temporary thrill to those behind the lens, it doesn't automatically grant it the status of being pure art. Street photography might be many things, but pure art? That's pushing it in most cases. Also, the tug of war between art and ethics is where my head just explodes into a cloud of question marks. Street photography at times seems like the Instagram of the art world. It feels easy, like anyone could do it. But the line between profound and pathetic can get real fuzzy real quick. You're not sure if a photographer is genuinely showing you the gritty underbelly of society or merely throwing darts at a board in the dark and hoping one sticks. I believe the term spray and pray is what we're looking for here. I believe that applies to a lot of street photographers. And you got to look at people like Bruce Gilden, who makes this whole dilemma his playground with his confrontational style. It's like he's the friend who walks right up to your crush at a party, unfiltered and in your face, for better or worse. Sometimes it reveals an unsettling truth, but you can't help but wonder if it's cutting-edge artistry or just a pushy approach to intruding on someone else's world. Then you've got photographers like Van Ho, who opt for a more poetic, almost cinematic approach. It's the difference between like a Gaspar Noé film or a Sofia Coppola film. They're both unique in their own right, but one doesn't make you feel like you need a shower after watching it. Man, shots fired at the bling ring. His shots are carefully crafted, each frame designed to evoke a sense of wonder. It's not about throwing the viewer into a mosh pit of chaos. It's more like being gently led into a world that's simultaneously mesmerizing and serene. Van Ho's approach is a reminder that street photography doesn't always need to be an assault on the senses. It could be a soothing, almost meditative experience. And now shift the lens over to Saul Leiter, because his work is also sort of like a cinematic experience. You can picture it as a quiet art film where light and shadow create an intricate ballet on the streets. Leiter's lens acts as a subdued storyteller, peeling back the layers of urban life to reveal the delicate dialogues formed through the interplay of colors and emotions. In the expansive landscape of street photography, Saul Leiter epitomized the diverse spectrum of artistic expression, offering a distinctive perspective that compels us to reevaluate not just what we observe on the streets, but how we interpret it. And finally, William Eggleston enters the scene armed with a palette of vivid colors. His lens dares to transform the mundane into the extraordinary, akin to ordering the most exotic dish on the menu when everyone else is playing it safe. My stance on this, I'm caught in a whirlwind of confusion, bouncing between seeing street photography as an occasionally meaningful art form and as a weirdly composed, camera-wielding obsession. Street photography remains an ongoing discourse, kind of like that is a hot dog a sandwich debate that you're not sure you need to solve, but you just can't help thinking about. And I have to admit that, aesthetically speaking, street photography just doesn't set my world on fire. In terms of composition, it oftentimes, feels like a chaotic visual discord, and not in the good way. Like, I'm all for the raw and spontaneous, but there's a fine line between capturing a captivating slice of life and just creating visual bedlam. It really is as if some photographers throw elements together haphazardly, hoping that the resulting cacophony will be mistaken for profound artistry. But more often than not, it just ends up looking like an unresolved visual puzzle. And look, it's not that I'm adverse to embracing the disarray of life. Believe me, I'm all for it. But the thing is, street photography, more often than not, seems to lack a certain intentionality in its composition, for me at least. It's as if the photographer rushes out onto the streets, camera in hand, hoping to stumble upon a revelatory moment. And while this spontaneity can lead to some truly magical instances, it could just as easily lead to a cluttered mess of visual elements that don't necessarily coalesce to a coherent narrative. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So while I have immense respect for the street photographers who manage to capture authentic slices of life amidst the urban hustle, the visual aspect of the genre, more often than not, leaves me yearning for a bit more precision and purpose. It's sort of like going to a restaurant and being served a dish where all the ingredients are thrown onto the plate without much thought. Because sure, you might find a few delightful surprises, but overall it's a sensory jumble that lacks the artful finesse that I crave. But there is something inherently authentic about capturing life's unscripted moments on the street. But as it's migrated into the digital realm, the true essence has been stretched and contorted, ultimately pushing it into the just another trend territory. You see, street photography has always been about this gritty, unfiltered portrayal of society, capturing life's real, unsanitized moments. It was sort of the underdog of photography, like the Rudy of photography. And it's always been rebelling against the pristine and curated aesthetics that I was pining for just moments ago. But eventually came the Instagram era, and suddenly everyone with a smartphone became a street photographer. The genre, once synonymous with authenticity, started to morph into an overhyped trend. The hunt for likes and shares became more important than portraying genuine, unfiltered life. The democratization of street photography was a double-edged sword. It became more inclusive, and that's awesome, but it also went too far. Like an underground band that signs with a major label and then loses all of its edge. Pictures started to look staged or overly posed or digitally altered to perfection. The pursuit of online acclaim took precedence over capturing the gritty spontaneity that was once its lifeblood. And it didn't stop there. The rise of influencer culture did its thing. Street photographers, initially the humble documentarians, began to see themselves as the star of their own show. Suddenly, the candid observers became the main attraction, disrupting the very scenes that they wanted to capture with their presence. Now, instead of reflecting the world as it was, street photography started reflecting the image that the photographer wanted it to be. It became less about the streets and the people on them, and more about the photographer's image and self-promotion. The authenticity that once defined the genre started feeling manufactured, as artificial as a pop song engineered to go viral. And one can't help but wonder if street photography, once an emblem of raw, genuine documentation, is being drowned out by the noise of online trends and the allure of digital fame. Also, before everyone goes attacking me in the comments, is having an opinion on street photography akin to climbing atop some self-defined high horse? Because it can kind of feel that way sometimes. It kind of feels that way right now. Perhaps it's a case of yucking someone's yum, as Pete Holmes would say. On one hand, it's hard to argue with the idea that people should be allowed to pursue their passions, make the art they want to make, and do what they love without being subjected to criticism. But then again, isn't the whole point of art to provide thought, to ignite debate, and to challenge the status quo? This debate surrounding street photography is indeed one worth having. Art, the way I see it, is not meant to exist in a vacuum. It thrives on discourse, on pushing boundaries and examining the underlying motivations. In a world where nearly everything could be reduced to a double tap and a heart emoji, it's essential to scrutinize the changing landscape of art, including its digital evolution. The conversation isn't about squashing anyone's creative endeavors. It's about pondering the impact of a genre's transformation on its original essence. Because in an era where the line between authentic art and opportunistic trend has blurred, questioning the shift is not only valid, but, in my opinion, necessary. And it's not about dismissing people's passions, but rather about challenging them to reflect on what art means and how it evolves with the times. The street photography debate isn't just about taste. We could have left this video at just that, but it's about exploring the evolving intersection of technology, self-expression, and authenticity. In an age where everyone is a potential artist, where we can all be both creator and consumer, it's only natural that conversations like these arise. The world of art is vast and multifaceted, and its vitality hinges on this kind of critical discourse. So no, this video is not about yucking anyone's yums. It's about keeping the dialogue alive, and in doing so, ensuring that art continues to evolve and provoke. Thank you all for watching this video. It was one that I wanted to make for a little while now. And actually, originally, this video was going to be about the ethics of street photography. I decided I'm going to make that at some point in the future, and it's going to be an entire video dedicated to that discussion. And also, something I'm going to touch upon in a future video related to street photography is a discussion of genre and how genre overlaps so often, because one thing that I think was potentially overlooked is whether or not I consider myself a street photographer or what actually is the textbook definition of street photography. And it does get kind of muddy. I don't consider myself a street photographer, more of a still life, and more recently a portrait photographer. I do go on photo walks and I do take photos on the street. So does that make me a street photographer? I just tend to leave people out of my photos pretty much at all times. So I don't self-identify as a street photographer, but some people out there might consider what I do to be a form of street photography. And therefore this video is almost like I'm calling myself out. But to reiterate what I said at the end there, I'm not trying to call anyone out. This is just a discussion. And if anything, it's just a personal feeling and opinion on the subject. So I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that maybe it made you see street photography in a different light, for better or worse. I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are on street photography, on whether or not you find it to be ethical, or whether or not you find it to be considered an art form. Do you find it aesthetically pleasing? Whether you feel that it's overrated, underrated, let me know. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified when new videos are released. Also, you can become a member of this channel, so go find that join button, and for a few bucks a month, you can become a member. You can get some interesting perks, stuff like that. Also, something that I haven't been promoting too much, if you would like to buy any prints of my own personal photography, be sure to head over to my print shop at thedarkroom.com. There will be a link in the bio, and you can find all that and potentially help support the channel that way. With that, I think we got all that out of the way. Street photography, we did it. We talked about it. We're going to talk about it again. And with that, I'll see you all next time. Pierre, say hi to the people.
I find William Eggleston to be grossly overrated.
Jesus, dude.